Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to welcome you to our conference on EU-China regional cooperation. My name is Jolanta Szymanska. I'm the head of European Union program at the Polish Institute of International Affairs, and I will have a pleasure to moderate our panel session. The debate will be proceed by a presentation of the report on the subnational dimension of EU-China relation. This report is available at the reception desk in a paper version. It's also available at the Polish Institute of International Affairs website in two language versions, in English and in Polish. For a start, I think I can say some words about this report. It's good to mention that this is the result of a 3-year project founded by the Polish National Science Center and conducted by the Polish Institute of International Affairs together with Faculty of International and Political Science at the University of Łódź in Poland. The aim of the project was to understand the role of cooperation between European and Chinese regions in the politics of the European Union as regards China. The study involved the phenomenon of paradiplomacy, relations of international, subnational entities whose goal is to achieve economic, cultural and political benefits. This report was written by Tomasz Kamiński, Adrianna Skorupska and Justyna Szczudlik. Justyna is the only author who is present here today. And this report was edited by Justyna, who is Deputy of Research and also Head of Asia-Pacific Program and China Analyses at the Polish Institute of International Affairs, and Adrianna Skorupska. Adrianna is unfortunately not here with us. She is a former analyst of PISM, specialist on the international cooperation of local government and the cross-border cooperation. And this report was published in August last year and presented for the first time in December in Warsaw for Polish audience. And during this meeting, we had an opportunity to exchange views on EU-China regional cooperation with Polish experts and with Polish local officials. Later in January, we had the second presentation of this report in the Polish embassy in China. And today we are here. We are here to reach the wider audience and present this report in the capital of Europe. To also show the wider European perspective of this issue and confront the outcome of this report with the best specialists on the topic. And Brussels is especially important for us, not only because it's a capital of Europe, as I mentioned already, and close to the European institutions and decision makers. And as a think tank, PISM places itself close to decision makers, not only in Poland, but also in the European Union. We chose Brussels intentionally, also because we are planning to open Brussels office very soon, in fact, in spring. So we can say that this conference is also a kind of opportunity to share at least a small piece of our research with the Brussels audience and with Brussels experts. and to get closer to Brussels expert community. And we hope we'll have more events in our new office soon. Okay, so let me now introduce our today's panelist, Alice Ekman, senior analyst in charge of the Asia at the European Union Institute for Security Studies. Rudolf Niessler, principal advisor for international relations, European Commission. And Justyna Szczudlik, I already mentioned, as our expert on China, and also the head of actually Asia-Pacific program at the Polish Institute of International Affairs. And before we start the panel discussion, I will ask Justyna to present the main takeaways from the report. Justyna, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jola, and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, I would like to express our gratitude that you are here and that you decided to take part in this event. I will also once again thank you all our panelists that you are here. Jola already said a few words about the assumption of our project and some goals, but I would like to very briefly and concisely present you the main results of our project, and I would like to focus, of course, on the report. As Jola already mentioned, I am the report has 3 authors. I am the only one I'm one of the authors. So Tomasz Kamiński, Adriana Skorupska, and me. What I would like to underscore at the beginning is that the initiative of the project came from Professor Tomasz Kamiński from University of Łódź, who was the project leader, and Adriana was a project leader at PISM, and I was only a part of the project team. Jola already mentioned about the aim of the project, about the phenomena of paradiplomacy that we focused on, like international relations between subnational entities. But I would like also to underscore that we focus only on 6 biggest member states in terms of population, because it would be very difficult to do research and to look at 28 member states. So we, in this report, there are information about Germany, France, Spain, Poland, Italy, and the UK. And also there are some case studies of European regions cooperating with Chinese partners. A few words about the methodology that we used. The project was divided in 2 parts. The first part was surveys that we sent to the regions, to the units responsible for international cooperation in those 5 member states and in selected local governments units in the United Kingdom. They were pretty easy, short questions. If, for example, a particular region cooperates with China, if this cooperation is active or not, what kind of areas of cooperation are between the regions, what's the obstacles, what's the challenges, benefits, and so on. The second part of the project, it was interviews that we conducted with EU officials here in Brussels, but also with selected regions from the 6 countries surveyed. We conducted together 11 interviews in Germany, Spain, France, Poland, and Italy, and 1 in the UK. And the interviews were conducted between 2017 and 2019. We collected information from 77 regions in France, Spain, Germany, Poland, and Italy, and from 12 local governmental units from the UK. And now a few words about the results in terms of some kind of I would like to present you some numbers. We identified 146 partnerships with China, and 77% of them are active and 15 not active. Term active means that in the last 2 years there was some kind of contacts or joint activities between 2 regions, European and Chinese. We also tried to find any kind of a pattern about the dynamics of the contacts. So when you look at the moment when the partnerships were launched, so first partnership were launched in 80s, mostly by 3 countries, Germany, France and United Kingdom, mostly with the coastal and or eastern Chinese provinces, probably because of the fact that Deng Xiaoping started the process of opening China and set up special economic zones in those regions. In 90s, at the beginning of 90s, we can say that there were dynamic was not were less dynamic in terms of establishing cooperation, probably because of aftermath of the events in China in 1989 in Tiananmen Square. But still, eastern and coastal provinces was selected as a partners for European regions. First years of 21st century, there was increase of new partnerships. Still, eastern coastal provinces was the number ones. During the crisis in 2008 and 2009, lower dynamics, probably because countries were preoccupied with the crisis. And we can say that since 2010, there is once again more activities in launching cooperation between the countries, and we can see that Spain, Italy, and Poland, those countries which are not very active previously, they decided to launch cooperation at the regional level. And of course, since 2014, many partnerships, 47, after the announcement of the Belt and Road Initiative. Most of the partnerships are with provinces Shandong, Shanghai, Jiangsu, and Guangdong. So all of them are eastern provinces and with access to the sea. When we are talking about the provinces which are eastern but which without access to the sea, there are most partnerships with Hunan and Hubei. About central China, or those provinces that are covered by the Great Western Openness Program, we have 2 provinces which are the most important, Sichuan and Chongqing. Now I'd like to show you 2 maps. I know that probably it will be not very clear, but here is 6 countries that we surveyed, and these the blue color, the deep blue color, means that those regions cooperate with China. One remark, when you look at the United Kingdom and you see these gray areas, it does not mean that those areas do not cooperate with China. It means that we do not have information because we have not received questionnaires from the UK. From the UK, we received only 12 questionnaires, so it does not mean that those regions do not cooperate with China. And here is the map of China with the I know that it's also very difficult to read, but you can look at the hard copy or on our website. You can see in the tables the names of the regions that European regions that cooperating with the Chinese provinces. Here is a shortly map of Poland. Most of Polish regions cooperate with China, and on this map you can see which regions are Chinese regions which Chinese regions cooperate with Polish regions. And now I would like to go to the main conclusions of the report, of the project. So first of all, I would like to underscore that China is an important direction of international cooperation of European regions, because 80% of the regions declare cooperation with Chinese partners. When we are talking about the drivers of the reason why the regions cooperate with China, 2 main dimensions, economic and academic, dominate the cooperation. We also identified the so-called effective cooperation triangle, which means that local government, together with local business and local academic institutions or educational institutions, together undertake joint initiatives to cooperate with China or try to approach to China. We also see that there is a relationship between central government policy or relations between China and some member state at the central level and regional activities. If the relations are okay, for example, two governments decided to upgrade relation to the strategic partnership, so we can see also the more activities at the local level that EU regions and Chinese regions like to cooperate with each other. We also see that activity in contacts with China, undertaken by European regions, those activities are usually financed by regions' own funds. Regions told us that they use also EU funds, but EU funds which are for the promotional purposes. We were told that there is no any kind of EU fund which is directed for cooperation, particularly with China. We also ask about some kind of cooperation or and some, let's say, contact between like Brussels and regions in terms of cooperation with China. We were told that there is no any specific communication. And we also ask if regions need any support from the, let's say, Brussels, and there was lack of clear position among the regions regarding expect EU support for the cooperation with Chinese provinces and cities. And the seventh main conclusion is that regions are aware of the threats and challenges in cooperation with Chinese partners, taking into account the recent change of, let's say, EU policy towards China and the process of centralization and the assertiveness in China. Then we try to find some factors that enable efficient cooperation. There are three factors. Economic factor, of course, the most important, as the main driver for cooperation from both sides. Also political factor, which I already mentioned, that good relations with China at the government level foster subnational cooperation. And a very important human factor, that if there is a person in a particular region who believes that China is important and it's very important to cooperate with China, so it is easier to have this cooperation. We have example of Wuch, for example. We have example of Liverpool, where is a person who is really focused on cooperation with China, and because of his or her initiative and dynamics, so the cooperation is flourishing. And we try also to find some trends and to think what could be changed in the future. So we were told by the regions that they would like to cooperate with different regions, not only one or two. If they have some ideas, or they can find some synergies with other Chinese regions, they would like to cooperate with many partners. We also thought that there is no need to formalize contacts, because many of those cooperation is based on some MOU or some kind of an agreement, and we were told that it's not needed. That there is even some kind of readiness to resign from partnership agreements. Regions told us that they noticed the change in attitude of Chinese provinces or Chinese authorities, local authorities, in cooperation with the EU. For example, there are Chinese delegations coming to visiting European regions are not very frequent, smaller, well prepared, with a particular interest, with a particular goals they would like to achieve, mostly economic ones. We also were told that sometimes the regions are preparing for giving up their representation abroad, just to close the offices, because it's not very useful. As I mentioned earlier, that they are also aware of the threats that may come from cooperating with China because of China's foreign policy and investment strategy. And region also told us that they are trying to focus on reciprocity, not only receive Chinese delegation and talk about something what is going on in Europe, but also would like to get some knowledge from the Chinese regions. What European regions is trying to achieve is to find a specialities or in cooperation with China and to promote the strengths, to look for synergy there, and also try to promote the brands on flagship initiatives, like let's say in case of Poland, in which like a train, cargo train, or cooperation between universities. And the last two trends, I added a question mark because there's some kind of discussion if these two trends are okay and true or not. The first one is that we wrote in the report that the role of Chinese regions is growing despite attempts at centralization. There is some question mark because, as you know, that under the Xi Jinping, the process of centralization there is a strong centralization. But in our research, we think that also despite the fact that there is a centralization and Chinese province or regions should achieve the goal that was set up, designated by Beijing or by the central government. But sometimes because the particular region or particular province is very well integrated in the global economy, and the economic strength and the economic weight is very important. So sometimes they have, let's say, to some extent, an independence to some extent, and they could negotiate something with the central government. So in that sense, we can say that the role of Chinese regions is growing to some extent. And the last point that we also wrote in the report that that we can expect greater interest from Chinese regions in cooperation with European partners, but only with those regions or those countries in Europe which have something that China really needs, like technologies mostly. So, for example, to be honest, it's a little bit sad conclusion that probably in case of Poland it will be difficult to expect that this cooperation will be expanding because, for example, we do not have much to offer. And the last slides about some conclusions for the EU. There is a low impact of EU-China relations on local cooperation between the 6 EU countries and the Chinese partners. We think that contact between regions and cities creates a useful channel of influence on China in promoting more balanced and inclusive development. Because also it's important to have a look what is going on at the local level, because local authorities are those entities which, in fact, implementing this, let's say, central policy goals, negotiate investments, and also there's a people-to-people contact and so on. And we think that subnational entities, European subnational entities, should be included in the EU science diplomacy. And for us, I think it's also our conclusion that it is worth for Brussels to monitor cooperation with China at the regional level. And the last point, we were told by many regions during our interviews that it might be helpful to create a forum for the exchange of experience of local governments engaged in cooperation with China. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much for your attention, and I pass the floor to Jola.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Justina, for this presentation. And before we start the first round of questions, I will give opportunity to our panelists to comment on main findings of this report, because I could see that you were taking some notes, so probably you have your opinions. I already know that you could read this report, so probably you have something to share with us. And so my question is, how do you evaluate this project, and what do you find especially interesting, and maybe you can also indicate some weaknesses?
Okay. Okay, how much time? I want to stay in the in the time frame because this.
Let's say 5-7 minutes.
Okay, because the report is so interesting that I would have many things to say, but I don't want to monopolize the floor. But first and foremost, thank you, PISM. Thank you, Justina, for this very detailed report that was interesting to read and which is filling a gap here in terms of analysis that is most welcome. And I read it carefully for this event, but also before. And let me share with you some notes I took while reading it. It's many points of convergence. Based on my own fieldwork and my own experience, I didn't do an extensive fieldwork on this specific topic, but I'm also working on China and saw trends that are converging with the one that Justina has identified. So I would like to share with you some of these remarks based on the reading and also based on what Justina has just presented. To me, this report is amazing because it converges with 8 trends that are broader that we have been identifying looking at development of subnational diplomacy between China and Europe in recent years. First trend, if I may share it with you, is that this para-diplomacy is part of a broader diversification of diplomatic channels under Xi Jinping. You may have heard that he has announced in 2017 that China should develop a new type of party-to-party relationship, Xinjiang Dangguanxi. So basically, Xi Jinping called the party to invite 15,000 representatives of foreign political representatives of the diversity of country, not just Europe, but over the next 5 years. That was an announcement of December 2017. Many of these party representatives are also local representatives. So it means that, everything is, this development, the diversification of diplomatic channels is intertwined. It's not new, but we have seen in part of the broader picture, we have seen a renewed activism, diplomatic activism of Xi Jinping, who has been constantly proposing new initiatives, diversifying diplomatic ties. So you have party-to-party ties, city-to-city ties, region-to-region ties, or provincial ties, think tank-to-think tank ties, university-to-university ties, port-to-port ties. Sorry about the repetition, but just to show that it's part of a broader picture of dynamism, and in general term, it has to be taken into account in the broader framework of new type of international relations. This is the concept that the central government in China is very much promoting, but basically saying we, China, of course, are valuing the official government ties, traditional ties, diplomatic ties among officials, among diplomats, but there is also a diversification of channel that we can promote in line with our interest, and this involves government official, but also a representative of the private sector, of academia, of the civil society in general term. So this development is interesting, and I really read this report as part of this broader dynamic. Second trend that I would like to share with you and Justina after reading the report is the asymmetry of strategic capabilities between local governments from China or from Europe. Let me be clear. Justina mentioned form of centrality. A lot of twinning initiatives, for instance, between cities are emerging from the Chinese side. Not always, but in many occasions. This is a result of a careful strategic design, sometimes top-level design, as we say in official Chinese language, and is proposed by the local institutions, but come also from a broader strategic thinking and brainstorming at central level. What I mean by that is that when a local government in Europe receives such proposal, there is an asymmetry from the beginning because this proposal has been well designed and well thought on one side, and the other side it's been received not necessarily with strategic capabilities that is in line with the partner in China. What I mean is that there is an asymmetry of capabilities. To be honest, I've seen many cities lost when receiving a proposal. So we might be interested in cooperating with this Chinese city or province, but tell us what does it mean, what are the strategic advantages, risk that we may face. But you know, cities, sometimes even a big city of a so-called big EU member states, does not have so many staff dedicated to geostrategic or geopolitical affairs. Often, sometimes they focus on, as you mentioned, Justina, on economic development of their own, territory, local territory. So sometimes they lack this general or broader perspective that is often present on the Chinese side. It's not to share with you a judgment, it's just to share with you the asymmetry in terms of human resources and strategic planning that has consequences when negotiating partnership at local level, because to me it's semi-local. It's not fully local. On the Chinese side, even if it's proposed at local level, you know how also the Chinese system is working. For example, MFA has a local, Ministry of Foreign Affairs have a local office at provincial level. Same from the Fagaiwei, from the NDRC, which has a local office. Same for the MOFCOM. So you have this vertical system with checks and coordination, which ensure a form which can be a limitation in terms of efficiency, but also can ensure a form of a deeper strategic proposal in line with the country's interest. Third feature I wanted to share with you is that we notice an asymmetry of interest within EU member states. So I mentioned asymmetry of strategic capabilities between Europe and China. Now I mentioned asymmetry of interest within member states. It's what Justina mentioned as well, and I also briefly mentioned in second point, is basically you have often local government who look at economic outcomes. And increasingly, you have central ministries in several member states. I can say it's a general trend, who are increasingly looking at a key issue from a geopolitical perspective, especially at this point in time in the context of reinforced competition between China and the US. A lot of decisions that are taken at local level have a geopolitical dimension. And then some provinces or some cities are pushing for economic cooperation because they see also creation of jobs, and this is really good for the image, for the constituency. At the same time, they are facing contradictory sometimes discussion with central administration who's saying, yeah, but have you looked at the other side of the coin, or have you looked at the string attached to such investment, etc., etc. So you have this discussion in several member states, and it's worth considering at this point in time, given that it's increasingly widespread. A fourth point I wanted to share with you, trend, and that I also see along with Justina's report, is the branding of cities. Increasingly, you have cities who are. This is not related to China. It's related to their ambition to have an international image, to also promote their economic advantages and strengths, specificities abroad. But this branding, what is interesting when it comes to China, is that it's sometimes integrating Belt and Road Initiative. To be more specific, some cities are not trying to adjust their international branding, taking into account connectivity, or taking into account the fact that they are part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Sometimes it's a local push or local branding ambitions, but it's interesting. For example, I've seen the port of Marseille, not necessarily a city, but a port, who said that we are on the Belt and Road Initiative. And as such, we are attractive because we are on a sea lane of communication, etc., etc. But this was not decided at central level at all, right? And sometimes it creates also divergences of views between central government and local government, or even between local institutions in the same constituency or same region. Fifth trend, I will be faster, but I think this report is fascinating, so I wrote so many notes, but stop me whenever it's getting boring or redundant. But fifth trend is...
How many trends do we have?
In total, 8, but I can stop at 7 if you wish, or even now. Okay, briefly. Fifth trend is reinforcement of cooperation between local and central government in some EU member states. Due to the development I mentioned, and due to the fact that some cities or some regions are lost, they are increasingly calling for help. And they call for help, and as a result, central government sometimes send reinforced support to them. meetings, assistance, phone line for availability. So feel free to call, feel free to reach out. As you know, due to the political system, I mean, in many countries, I'm thinking of France because that's the country I'm originally from, but I don't represent France or nor the EU here. But in many systems, I mean, the cities have a certain margin of autonomy, and central government cannot impose any, and was careful not to impose any strong guidelines on the local government. But now that it's coming from the local government, call to have more support in terms of geostrategic planning, especially when it comes to China, we have seen a new kind of trend of communication, which is also emerging not just for China, but now who can also be presented as a model for other type of cooperation. Basically, it has fueled a debate at national level about how to engage with local government in their international strategy of development, and that's very interesting. Sixth trend is a reinforcement of internal and external strategic capabilities of local government. I've seen now cities facing new challenges, recruiting new advisors to develop their international strategy. I cannot generalize for all Europe, but I've seen this trend emerging because they are facing with increasingly geostrategic question. A seventh trend is image. Some of the decision of the international strategy of local government is shaped by clear-cut interest and shaped by fundamental issues and questions. Sometimes it's just shaped also by the image that the mayor or the region representative want to project. Sometimes it's cool to be associated with China, sometimes it's not, right? And that we want it or not, sometimes the strategy of the local government evolves in relation with this image. And I've seen, for example, some mayors or representatives of regions in some EU member states changing the position toward China because they have seen that it's less popular than before, or actually it can even be dangerous for the upcoming elections. So this dimension is interesting, and I think it has to be taken also into account in the reflection, because in the end it matters. The political calendar has an impact, especially related to some topics. I could mention Huawei, but not only, in general term, with growing skepticism and also expectation of more investment from Chinese side or more level playing field type of cooperation. That kind of dynamic has emerged. Last trend I wanted to share with you is more related to the Chinese side. I fully agree with Justina about the centralization. I also mentioned from the beginning the dynamism that Xi Jinping has tried to promote in terms of diversification of diplomatic channels. But we also see more and more contradictions between foreign policy objectives and domestic policy objectives. To be more concrete, Justina, in the page 61, I remember it very clearly, you mentioned, it's part of the conclusion, but an interesting point you underline again, that the number of Chinese delegation visits to Europe has decreased sharply in recent years. This is partly the result of the 8-point guidelines on expenses of civil servants. It's also part of the anti-corruption campaign guidelines. In general term, international travels are limited in time, in duration, in also in expense, and even if there is this push for more twinnings, not just between cities, by the way, but also between ports or other type of local infrastructures, this is a push from Chinese side, and there is this international ambition, foreign policy ambition to diversify diplomatic channels. At the same time, you have a domestic political context which is, in practical terms, constraining this development. And this is noticeable at local level, not just in terms of the rhythm of the Chinese delegation visit to Europe, but also when you look at the content of the discussion. I had a chance to observe some of this discussion, and I can say sometimes it's completely empty. Not always, but sometimes, just because of some topics are becoming more and more sensitive. And I would like to mention Belt and Road Initiative, for instance, being a core project of General Secretary General Xi Jinping. This project is becoming sensitive to a point that the talking points that are written that are communicated by local delegation, Chinese local delegation, to their European counterparts are similar from one delegation to another, or the talking points are harmonized in a way that it's hard to touch upon very precise issues or topic of cooperation or raise concern, question in a sense that that will be addressed in details. We have seen a disharmonization of communication that in a sense is constraining the content of local discussion between Chinese and European counterparts. There would be many more things to say, but because this report is fascinating, but once again, thank you, Justina, and I guess my colleague on my left side would have much more to say as well.
Okay, thank you very much for your remarks. As we don't have so much time left, I will ask Rudolf not only for his comment, but also add my question. Because Alice mentioned the regional call for help when it comes to cooperation. And I would ask you also if we have any initiatives coming from the European Commission and our other institutions, European institutions, that could support this cooperation.
Yeah, good afternoon, and thank you very much for inviting me. It's a great pleasure. I would like to say a few words about the report first, and then perhaps try to respond to your questions by framing it perhaps in a bit a broader range of remarks. But first, I think you should be aware I'm coming from the Directorate General dealing with regional and urban policy. So when I look at that question, the question has several facets, and I would like to touch on them. First of all, the report, I think, is really very good, very interesting reading. For us, it's something that brings up intelligence that we didn't have. You know, we are dealing with regional policy at the global European scale, but we didn't have this information because these initiatives were originally really bottom-up by the regions. And I was also very much struck by the history that is already in there, because all these things started really long ago. And I think now we have a kind of a certain level of experience which definitely will shape also the further development of these corporations. Very interesting thing. I think, however, equally it might be worth looking at another question, and you mentioned it prominently, and I can only subscribe to that, and that is the cooperation between cities, because cities are main players. And in particular, in the strategic dimension of our cooperation with strategic partners, as China is one, cities can amplify certain ambitions that we both have enormously. Take the global challenges of climate change, take the question of research and innovation, bringing up the technological level to cope with these questions, sustainable development, circular economy. I think this is really, cities are really places which can shape global change. And I think it's very well recognized that the global agenda of the United Nations. So don't lose out of sight this very important thing. I mean, if we would have somehow a pattern which would cover, I think, the whole range of subnational activities, I think would be interesting. But I start now saying a few things from our own policy, because we are supporting regions and cities in Europe in their aim to develop themselves. And we provide investment support, which is targeting smart, sustainable, and inclusive growth. And one of the main ambitions that we have is that we put the regions, but also the actors in the regions, that mainly enterprises, at the level that they can be more productive and more successful with their undertakings. And through that create jobs, but also expand, and trade beyond partners in the European Union. So that means when we invest, for example, in the context of what we call the smart specialization strategies, where we want the regions to develop those competences in particular where they have a comparative advantage compared with other regions. So invest there. We want them and we want the enterprises there that they grow into a scale that they would be able to trade at the global international level. And that's why we have done this, but it was a very interesting finding coming from your report, saying that support from the European Union was not really used, or only the promotional part of it. It's true you cannot spend money from the structural and cohesion funds outside of the Union territories, but you, however, can shape the project substantively in this direction. And with that, I think we have an interest to promote cooperation. We want to have adult regions, adult companies to do their business, to be able to do their business in a solid way. So that's our own policy. But there is another aspect of the thing. For example, we in regional policy, we have engaged with China in strategic policy dialogues since 2006. When I look at your report, most of the stuff started far, far earlier. But it happened that we engaged somehow on a systemic level with the Chinese counterparts beginning of 2000. It followed then, and by the way, the Chinese were one of the first that we started this type of cooperation. It was then enlarged. We have now these policy dialogues with Japan, with India, with some of the major Latin American countries and North America. So there's something there where we, over the years, had engaged in a rather, I would say, deepened way in a policy learning. Because the Chinese were interested in what is Europe doing in its European regional policy dimension. And we more and more look at China also with a strong interest to learn from them on a number of issues. For example, they are very good on, for example, bringing innovation to the market. There are issues, I think, where we have really an interest very much to go deeper, and this is expressed really explicitly. So these policy dialogues are going on every year with a high-level event attached to the annual summits, and however also with another layer which is more driven by expert and administrations. However, I think there was one step then that I consider very important, and that was when we considered together, this was done with the external actions of the European Union in the context of the foreign policy, to put these policy dialogues on a broader scale. And we decided to start with the urban part, because the urban part was, in our view, more promising, as I said already, for a number of important issues. And it was now 3 years ago launched the the International Urban Cooperation Initiative. And that brought along city pairings between European cities and in other parts of the world. China is a prominent partner in there. There are very important cities in China taking part, and same in the European Union. And along these city pairings, we have engaged in a deeper level also towards the aim of reaching into concrete actions, pilot actions which are created, but by bringing in a broader range of partners. So you have the cities administrations, but then you have also academia, we have companies which are involved, and the aim there is really to be practical and to go into problem solving at the level of cities. And this was the whole initiative was designed very much also along the main priorities given by the United Nations. So that means we try also to then to sell the outcomes, which are, I think, very valuable to a broader range in the context of the initiatives run by the European, by the United Nations. So as I said, there is a broader range of things going on, but this is definitely a very valuable part of the contributions to that.
May I have one remark?
Okay.
Because Rudolf, you mentioned about that city-to-city cooperation is really important, and I fully agree with you. But one remark: our report or our project was about region to region. It was not about city to city. And frankly speaking, we had some problem with the UK, for example, because in the UK, it was really difficult to receive the response. From the regions, mostly but we receive from the cities. So, to be honest, in our book, which will be published this year and will be will be broader than the report, because I was responsible for the UK. So, to be honest, during this research, I focused on city-to-city relations in case of UK-China, because it was really difficult to find. To have any contact with the region, because the regions are different in the UK and other EU member states. So I agree with you, but what I would like to just once again underscore that the report is about region to region, not city to cities. Another dimension, if I may put it in this way, when you're looking at the subnational relations.
Okay, thank you for
just perhaps one word immediately after. You are absolutely right, and this is an extremely valuable exercise that we have done, and also the region to region has its value. We will launch in very short time the follow-up action of the International Urban Cooperation Initiative, and there we will reach out also to the regional component. So the second action, we will in fact launch it in Abu Dhabi in a couple of days, will have a region to region component, and I think also our contacts with our Chinese partners in particular show that we might get, I think, rather interesting possibilities to do something together there.
Okay, thank you, Stina, for the explanation. And I would like to ask Alice, because Rudolf presented some initiatives of the European institutions supporting regional cooperation, and I would like to ask you about your opinion. If you think European Union recognize the importance of sub-regional cooperation, and is it important? I mean, this kind of cooperation is important for EU-China relations. What is your opinion?
Yes, well, I think the presentation we just heard from Rudolf confirmed also that there is an understanding of the multi-layered approach that is emerging between EU and China. It's just that in practice, you know, it's difficult to coordinate the several layers, because even within member states, and as Justina mentioned, you have different structure and division of the territory, which also prevent from harmonized approach. But at the same time, we don't necessarily need to develop a harmonized approach, just need to promote a local initiative, or to guide, or to assist sometime when there is a need, or just to flag that there is support possible for a certain kind of development or certain kind of cooperation. I think more than ever, and as Rudolf mentioned, local government and first and foremost cities will become diplomatic actors. Especially will be key actors when it comes to the relation between EU and China. Why? For several reasons. Due to initiative coming from the Chinese side, for instance, as I mentioned, the Belt and Roads, which is still going on project, has targeted specific cities in member states as transition point or end point, and actually indeed this identification has evolved through time, not necessarily in coordination or in good intelligence with the member states or with the central government. To give you an example, city of Lyon in France has been identified as ending point of the Belt and Road at some point in time. Then London was, and then others, but at some point in time as an important strategic hub for the Belt and Road initiative development. Before actually it was called Belt and Road, at the New Silk Road development at this point in time. But Paris was not necessarily part of a strategic decision, right? Trains labeled Belt and Road or New Silk Road reached Lyon, and there was a press release in Xinhua News Agency, and then the marketing machine is on, and then strategic design. Then you had the French train companies who say, well, hold on, maybe it makes more sense if we have a freight transportation hub in northern France, given the star shape of the freight system, the railway system in France, because if goods arrive to Lyon, then if you want to reallocate them or transfer them to other French cities, it has to pass by Paris, so it's a bit complicated. You understand? So what I mean is that a posteriori sometimes major initiatives that are designed in China are not necessarily in the interest of the member state where they are developed. Even if they are interest of the city, sometimes the interest of the city contradicts the overall national interest or the interest of other cities. So you have this kind of development. But more and more I also think that cities will be key diplomatic actors and will have to be fully incorporated when it comes to EU's approach toward China, because we are witnessing, in my opinion, an emerging tech competition between China and the US, which leads city to make a geopolitical or geostrategic decision. And I'm thinking, of course, of smart city development or sustainable development of urban areas. What kind of technologies do you develop on your territory? Which time frame in cooperation with which other city or countries? I don't have a clear-cut answer to that because it's not my field, but we are currently working on smart cities, China's smart cities strategy, and also question raised for Europe, and this will be a paper published shortly. And it really shows that you want it or not, cities is already now facing strategic choices due to the tense context of trade competition, but also tech competition. And when you look at the entity list that has been released by the Trump administration, there is now more than 200 entities, and it's far beyond Huawei. Yeah? Huawei is included, but you also have Hikvision or Dahua, which are video surveillance companies. You also have Mekvi, the facial recognition companies. All these are infrastructures and services that cities are potentially interested to develop on the territories. Not exclusively from Chinese companies, but these are technologies of the futures, right? So some cities and states in the US now are taking off cameras coming from China in this context of tech competition. The question will be raised. I mean, you know, in France, for example, some cities have been pointed out in the media and by also central government for their development of Huawei technology, for instance. And I'm thinking of the northern city of Valenciennes. So this creates really a geopolitical debate within member states, but also at EU level. We could talk about city of Duisburg in Germany, etc., etc. Many examples. So. Yeah, I really think that this topic is of interest, that the question of cities as diplomatic actors is of interest for various reasons, and for contextual reasons related to the geopolitical context, but also due to the fact that infrastructure development leads cities to be sustainable actors that are making choices that relates to what we call critical infrastructures. So it's about also security. How do you protect your grid, being power grid, water system, your network, your data, and this is emerging. I mean, is a debate that is increasingly emerging at national level. But first and foremost, sometimes local government are pushing toward one direction or another. And I'm, for example, thinking about city of Nice in France, which is now pushing for facial recognition, and then you have central government who is opposing it, but then you may have cooperation that does not necessarily follow a coordination between local and central. I would stop here, but all this, I think, I mean, it is really, I mean, I wouldn't say that the EU is fully ready for that, but it's normal because it's evolving now, it's emerging now. So just noticing it now together, I think is already a part of the job. and raising the right question to address them rather quickly, not only among researchers or government, but I think business representatives are very much thinking about it, and we are also seeing emerging smart city coalition or group of cities or group of companies working together to develop the future of cities, of sustainable urbanization, and this is an interesting topic to follow as well in the context of tech competition.
Okay, thank you very much. And another question to Rudolf. I would like to ask if local governments have an impact, and I mean local governments, their experience have an impact on wider EU-China policy. Does the European Union takes it into account shaping this strategy?
Well, in principle, what the European Union definitely wants is that relations are based more on people-to-people contacts. That means not high diplomacy and governments dealing with governments. This is indispensable. But we are very much aware also from our strategic agenda. We need people to people. We need a broader engagement. We need the local, the regional actors to play their part. This somehow said as a principal thing. But however, we must be aware about one thing, and you mentioned it at least before. You know, it cannot go that we go in a totally uncoordinated way into this activity by letting people more or less shoot in all directions. Well, this is well understood, and I think it is an outspoken priority also of this commission that we need to have internal policies and external policies going on a coherent line. And we are aware in Europe we have to do more on that front. I think it cannot be that, you are all aware, there's a weakness currently what Europe has. It comes from its history a bit, you know. We are very liberal, driven by free market. We are positive towards competition. But this weakness turned to some extent against us. And this is at the moment a strength, and we have to somehow rethink a few things. So there must be coherence also in what our local regional actors are doing, you know, and what somehow our global policy objectives are. Giving you an example, I think there are, take the Belt and Road, I think it in principle a very positive project that we could develop linking the world. However, one should be clear, Europe has a planning of trans-European networks. So that means the whole thing must come in a way that, so that this initiative develops by respecting what Europe has set out as its priorities and its standards for this project. And I think this is most likely, I think, also the next phase of our dialogue that we have with our strategic partner, like the Chinese, to make this work. You know, we will not stop talking, but to the contrary, to engage into in explaining the issue and come to solutions. But in general, I think putting cooperation on a broader footing, I think we should welcome it. And you know, as I say, the big global agenda, it's one of the biggest priorities to put the local players in there. In the Habitat United Nations agenda, the local players, I think, were really the most important ones that really could really bring a change. And take also, I think, a fantastic example. You know, we can continue working on climate change with cities in the United States, despite the fact that the Trump administration has chosen another way. You know, and it's perhaps bridging the time until you have perhaps more responsible positions back and not leaving it at the stage of doing nothing. So I think it has definitely its validity.
Thank you very much. And my last question in this session will go to Stina, and actually I will ask her to present a little bit activities of Polish regions. We are here in Brussels, but it's also good occasion to present Polish regions a little bit more. So Justyna, could you just say a little bit more about cooperation of Polish regions with Chinese regions?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to be very concise because we would like also open the floor for your questions. But well, to be honest, in our report we have two case studies of two regions: the Dolnośląskie Voivodeship and Łódzkie Voivodeship. And of course, the most well-known example is Łódzkie, because Łódź is the center of Poland and the region which started cooperation with Chinese regions many years ago, before Belt and Road Initiative was initiated or announced by the Xi Jinping. And Łódź is a very good example of bottom-up approach and the cooperation between the academic sphere or circle, local government and business. And I'm not sure, but probably you know this example, that we have the train between Łódź and Chengdu, and there's cooperation also between cities, Chengdu and Łódź, but also Łódź region and Sichuan province. And this is a good example that, as I mentioned, that it was bottom-up approach, because private Polish company decided to cooperate with Chinese region and to launch the cargo train connections between two cities. Then this cooperation was supported by the University of Łódź and people who are expert on China. They started to cooperate with the local government to disseminate knowledge about China. This cooperation started to be very active, and as a good example of the impact of the local government cooperation or regional cooperation is the fact that then Polish government, central government, decided to open the Polish Consulate General in Chengdu. So it was like a success story. Nowadays the situation is a little bit changing, and I think it's also a good example that that the relation at the central level has an impact on the local level, because, as you probably know, nowadays the Polish policy towards China changed a little bit. We are a little bit more cautious than before, and also we see that the local government in Łódź is a little bit more cautious or is not very active. But of course we have this train connection, and of course academic cooperation is flourishing because of the human factor and the person who is really involved in this cooperation, and it is Professor Mierzejewski. And so it is one case that we have in the report. The second one, very briefly, is the Dolnośląskie region, and the representative of the region was present in our event at PISM when was the launching event in Poland. And to be honest, he also confirmed that, for example, this particular region sees that Chinese approach is changing, as I mentioned also in the presentation. And also Alice said that, for example, they are waiting for Chinese delegations, that they should come last year, and still there's a problem with the visit of high-level representative of the province. This Dolnośląskie cooperates with Anhui province, and they are waiting for the governor of the province. But it's the problem because, as Alice mentioned, Xi Jinping decided that that the budget for traveling abroad is limited and controlled, and the governor could not go abroad whenever he or she wants. So this is the problem, and they see that on the paper the cooperation is pretty good, but it's very difficult to organize something or to have some tangible results, and there was some kind of complaints from his side. So you can see on these two examples that the central level is important, relations at the central level is important, but also you can see the change from the Chinese side.
Okay, thank you very much. And now I would like to give you an opportunity to get involved in our discussion. So please raise your hand if you want to ask any question or a comment. Our presentation or reports. I can see the question. I think we don't need a microphone, so.
I'll just shout loudly. I'm Ian Bond from the Centre for European Reform. Thank you very much. Looks like a very interesting report, and I look forward to reading it in depth and not just skimming the first few pages. I had two questions. One, I guess, for Rudolf, one for Justina. For Rudolf, after the joint communication and the fact that China is labelled, among other things, as a systemic rival, does that have an impact on the way that you view the development of regional or interurban links, or is there any kind of guidance that flows from that? And to Justina, in the course of your researches, particularly looking at academic links and so on, there's been some concern in some parts of the world about the activities of the United Front Work Department. Do you see any evidence that that is active in these kind of interregional relationships?
Okay, do we have any other questions? We can collect some 2-3 questions.
Thank you very much. My name is Jan Czarnowski. I'm from Wilfried Martens Center for European Studies. I have a question to Ms. Justina. When making this, asking the representatives of the provinces, regions in Europe, do you have the feeling that they perceived the cooperation with China, with Chinese regions as reciprocal, that this cooperation is benefiting them? And do you think that they have awareness of the fact that when the regions are cooperating in Europe, it can be said that it's kind of autonomous cooperation between regions which have some kind of autonomy from the central government, whereas in China you cannot say, because it's centralized state and regions are just the administrative entities. Were they aware that this kind of cooperation is equivalent to cooperation with Beijing directly, actually? And do they have awareness that economic cooperation with China is much more rooted, in case of China, with political cooperation, whereas investments from China are directly rooted to the politics, whereas in Europe we have this division between, some division between economy and politics? Thank you.
Okay, any other?
Hello, I'm Greg Stetz. I work with EU-China Hub and also with Oxford Analytica partially on China issues. My question is related to the topic of, the differences between the regions is a topic that has already been highlighted here today. There are differences in terms of technology, what those regions have to offer to the Chinese side. And I would also guess that the human capital also is different, because I guess Chinese diaspora in Poland is going to be very different from Chinese diaspora levels in Italy. So my question would be, basing on all your studies, what makes a region successful in cooperation with China? What are the preconditions? And how do we actually define success in this kind of cooperation from the European perspective, obviously, not the Chinese one? Thank you very much.
Okay, the last one, question.
I just a question. I'm a journalist from Italy. I was wondering whether, according to your this very interesting study, I must compliment this because I think it's very, very interesting, are the local relationships between local authorities in Europe and local authorities in Poland are more profitable, according to you, generally, than at the national level, when foreign ministers move and try to create links, etc. Just I don't know if this is relevant to your study.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for all the questions, and maybe we'll start from Justina, and you can, answer to all the questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. So the first question directed to me was about the United Front Department activities. Frankly speaking, because, one remark, I was responsible for the UK, and I conducted one interview in Liverpool. My colleagues Adriana and Tomasz were responsible for other countries. As far as I know, in my interview, United Front Department did not come up. And to be honest, when I asked the representative of Liverpool if they are really to some extent afraid of China, because it was the beginning of the change of EU approach towards China, the process of sharpening the policy, also the upcoming Brexit, I was told no, because they are well prepared for cooperation with China, and this the actions of infiltration of disinformation from Chinese side using this United Front Department were not mentioned. As far as I know, in other cases as well. So I'm sorry, but I could not confirm that this topic was there. About the reciprocity, if the cooperation between European regions and Chinese regions are reciprocal, well, of course, it depends on the regions and also the people who are responsible for the cooperation. Once again, I would like to use the Liverpool example. Also about the awareness of the fact that we as a region, European regions have autonomies, and Chinese regions do not have autonomies. Well, also it depends on the person who is responsible, and if the person of the local government, in the people in the Department of International Relations, they are aware about the partners they are cooperating with. And in the case of Liverpool, they are really aware that the person who is a vice mayor of Liverpool, whose responsibility is cooperating with China, he knows China very well, and he's aware. So it of course depends, because I was told by also my colleagues and in other regions, because also Alice mentioned that because of lack of human resources, so one person is responsible for many countries, so sometimes it's difficult to know what is going on in particular countries, especially China is so big and so complicated that you should know, for example, where to go, to which particular province, because provinces have some specializations that are designated by the central government very often. So so as I said, it depends on the person and the human resources. And Greg asked the question about how to define the success.
Yes, and as well, what makes a region successful as well. So you mentioned, I think, that the Chinese side tends to be interested in technology, but are there any other factors that make the cooperation actually work and not just
Well,
work?
to be honest, I think that the best option is to find a synergy between between Chinese interests and European regions' interests. And one example from Poland and one example from the UK. In case of watch, for example, in Poland and this region, with, as I mentioned about watch, which cooperates, or Łódzkie Voivodeship cooperates with Sichuan and Chengdu, because, to be honest, Sichuan and Chengdu is designated to cooperate with Central and Eastern European countries. So there is a synergy. So because, let's say, central government said Sichuan should cooperate with CE countries, so it's like a synergy, which would like to cooperate with China. So this is the good example. in terms of, of geographical direction, but also because of areas of cooperation as a logistical hubs. That Sichuan would like to be a logistical hub because of Belt and Road Initiative, the starting point, for example, one of many probably. And also we would like to be a logistical hub as an endpoint in sea or the transshipment hub, for example. This another example from the Liverpool, as I was told that there is a synergy in terms of, let's say, educational cooperation. Liverpool is a UK, English language, so Chinese would like to cooperate with universities in Liverpool. But also Liverpool is a port, and I was told that China is really interested in some free port solutions, which are different from the Chinese, let's say, free economic zones and so on. So, for example, there is a kind of the synergy. They would like to share the knowledge. And I was also told, because the financial issues is very important, I was told, but now I do not remember, but they know how much money Chinese students spend per year, how much pounds every year. So they would like to attract Chinese students just for financial reasons. So this is the answer about the success stories. If you find a synergy, that you have something that Chinese provinces want and vice versa. And the last question was about, I'm not sure if I understood correctly the question about Polish local authorities cooperation with Chinese local authorities and if it's profitable.
What makes one region in Europe choose a region is it cultural links or the products? I mean, how do you choose the region?
Well, so to be honest, I would like a little bit to repeat what I said before, because this decision why, for example, particular EU region chooses particular Chinese region. Also, one quotation from the interview in Liverpool, that the representative of Liverpool told me that to have a good cooperation with Chinese region, you as a, let's say, local government, European local government, should know where to go, because particular, as I mentioned also before, there are some specializations of in the provinces. So if you like cooperate in logistics, so you should go this and should choose this particular, let's say, province. If you like to have some high-tech cooperation with this particular region, so you should know where to go, because sometimes you can go to the wrong province. So in Liverpool, they are aware that there is a specialization in terms of areas of cooperation, but also geographical direction.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I think there is one thing to start with. China is a key player on the global scale, and from the European perspective, we will work with China. There is no question whatsoever, nothing to compromise. This we have to do, because the future will depend on what's going on further in China and how we continue shaping our lives here in Europe. You are right, there are a number of sticky issues at the time, and I think it's the effort to engage in resolving them, finding solutions. I think that our regional policy cooperation is not one of the sticky issues. I think in this domain, we are following very much the same interests, the same objectives, and we have an understanding that our cooperation should continue because we can contribute significantly to the global objectives, one thing that we subscribe on both sides, and also that we have really a global learning experience ahead of us where we are at the same level of the ice, learning on a number of issues which are relevant to our policy area. Very, very, I would say in key areas. Is it innovation? Is it sustainable development? Is it new technologies for green and sustainable growth and so on? It is true that to some extent, on the practical terms on how we work with each other, there is an asymmetry. But perhaps there is also something that might develop in the case of China. When we have a city in Germany who is organizing something in our partnership with a Chinese city, they don't go to Berlin and ask them. They can act on their own. Whereas we know when the whole thing happens in China, NDRC decides what will happen in the regions or in the city where we are working on. This asymmetry is existing, but perhaps it will evolve. And what I've learned personally so far in my work with the Chinese is that the whole approach in our policy domain in China is in real evolution. I think I had several occasions now to get the evolution of their own approach in regional policy making over the time explained, and to say where they are now and where they want to go. And I have the feeling that we are converging to some extent. They are now factoring in, I think, experiences that we made in Europe in their own development model, which I think also is something very positive. And I don't hide on our side, we are engaged in active learning from the Chinese on a number of issues. So I think it's definitely an area where we will continue. In practical terms, what is up there is that we will sign a new framework agreement for cooperation on regional and urban policy in the course of this year, and this will be a medium-term strategy for the next 5 years or so, something like this, where we will mark then what we do together, even doing in some areas joint research, like we do also with some other major players. So I think we are definitely in a constructive cooperation, very constructive.
I think no question was addressed specifically to me, so I'll try to be short. But in a nutshell, I think the issue of reciprocity is still very much there. The asymmetry is strong, at least all the local government I exchange with. I fully agree with Justina. They haven't mentioned United Front work, but they don't even know what is United Front work. So what I mean is that the knowledge of the political institutional landscape in China is so weak that they don't know that these things may happen, actually. I don't know. I mean, I haven't conducted the report, but I read Chinese official communication extensively, and when you read the press conference on CPC's United Front and International Relations that was released, so it's open source, 21st of October 2017, it clearly shows that there is an investment in United Front work and that the range of actors concerned is larger, domestically and internationally. It includes friendship association like SPIFA and others, including diaspora association. I wouldn't generalize and saying that all diaspora associations are conducting United Front work, and we should not, but clearly local representatives are considered as potential friends. And as you know, Xi Jinping has promoted this objective of enlarging China's circle of friends, right? And this circle of friends basically is how to reach out to any institution or individuals that at some point in time could have a position more favorable to China, now or later. you know. And actually, when China invite local leaders of 16+1, then 16+1, the local political leaders, the next generation, they consider that at some point they might have interesting position and they might see China or Chinese position favorably. So it's not necessarily the same involvement or interference or action than Russia. I think it's totally, I mean, it's different in many respects, and we should not here generalize, but clearly I see vulnerabilities on the side of many local government representatives, or at least I saw in the one exchange, in terms of knowledge. They have no knowledge of the political landscape in China, really no knowledge sometimes. In terms of also people knowledge. I must say, when I exchange with Chinese representatives, being even from at various levels, sometimes they have very good knowledge of individual actors, being MPs, mayors, of their stand, their political leaning, their understanding of China. In the contrary, is very difficult to develop because it's a very different political system. So this asymmetry, I see it at several levels. At the same time, due to the fact that China's domestic and foreign policy is even more centralized than before, patterns are emerging. For example, we see one pattern emerging, the port twinning, under the framework of the Belt and Road port-to-port twinning. So, or city-to-city twinning, it's not new, but it's been pushed forward. So, in the sense, I would see maybe the way forward in terms of strategic design on European side is to identify these patterns and compare notes, for example, among ports from Europe, among cities from Europe. I think, Justina, in one of the conclusion recommendation of your report, you said we're not conducting a forums, gathering European local government representative, etc. Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's all the way how you shape it and how efficient it can be. This type of, but if it's an opportunity to identify patterns of cooperation and vulnerability or way to establish a more reciprocal relationship, but I would say this work would be difficult because the asymmetry is huge. In my opinion, the asymmetry is huge, and step by step, I think. There is strengths and weaknesses in decentralized pattern-based model of China's local diplomacy, but at the same time, maybe a phenomenon that will be difficult to take into account from Beijing perspective is also local politics. Even if they have a good understanding, sometimes we have things switch, and we haven't mentioned the case of Prague, but it's interesting that it changed its twinning from Beijing to Taipei, which is an interesting development. I wonder if it's, I don't have the answer, but if it's an ad hoc case or if more such case will follow. But this shows sometimes surprising development that would be hard to anticipate even 1 year ago. So I don't have clear-cut answer, but I guess there will be different factors to take into account. The evolution of China's domestic orientation, the length of the anti-corruption campaign, the strictness of a delegation visit to Europe, at the same time political calendar in Europe, local calendar. All this will shape EU-China relation at local level and in a greater stance, I guess, in the coming years.
Okay, thank you very much for the interesting discussion. Unfortunately, we have to finish this debate. At the end, I would like to thank our panelists for their interesting contributions, but also you for participation and interesting questions. And let me invite you for light lunch, where we can actually continue our discussions in more informal manner. Thank you very much, and hopefully see you more often at PISM conferences here in Brussels very soon. Thank you.